really my great honor to be here. Thank you, thank you. So because Tabitha is sitting right there, thank you, because I can look at you for strength when I need it. I am going to start with my scars. And we're going to talk about the unpaid caregiver as the elephant in the room. We're going to use lots of data and lots of stories, and we're going to go fast because I have way too much to cover, as I always do. So buckle up, and I'm happy to share any of this data with anybody after. But I want to start there with talking about stuff that probably, if I were in a more traditional role, would get me fired, and that's okay. So this is my personally humbling and unflattering example number one, which these are my two co-founders at ARCHANGELS, and we joke but don't joke about how I have become very famous, especially over the intensity of the last little bit, of whipping off emails late at night that are very detailed about things that are not going well. And they now have learned in the morning to, they call it the email askance glance, like when they're looking at emails. And their reaction fairly is, I am pointing out things that are not going well when there are so many things that are going well. And this is my dad. He's 81. He recently moved from Austin, Texas to live with us in Boston. And he is my person. My dad is my person, every single way, shape, or form. And my dad loves wine, loves it. And I am 51 years old, and I'm now very good at lecturing my father by saying to him, you know, Daddy, you had a glass, that's enough, no more. And I have now recognized in him as he goes like this to me, because I'm often pouring myself a third glass of wine as I am telling him that he should really slow down. And these are my kids, who are 15 and 17, and the love of my life and the bane of my existence all at the same time. I am humbled, oh my gosh, at how much I have no idea what I'm doing. But I am also very good at lecturing them. So I will say to them, I want you guys to put down your phone, I need you to go outside, I need you to, eat better food, and I need you to sleep more. And this will be while I am now like this with that third glass of wine. Like, can't get it down my throat fast enough. And then I'm very famous, I roam the kitchen. They reckon I roam, and I just look for fat and salt and sugar, anything I can possibly get. And this is my man. And he's a good soul. But if you were to catch me on any of these nights where I've particularly gone off the edge, you would never know that. Because now is when I'm like, I'm ready to fight. And I'm like, I'll find him wherever he is. I just want you to know that I don't think we're getting along right now. I don't think this relationship is working. And he might have said nothing for the last hour. And that's the way that I will treat him. Why do I do this? Do I have a bad job that I need to quit? Am I a bad daughter? Am I a bad mom? Am I an alcoholic? Don't answer that one. Do I not adore my man? No. It is because I am an unpaid caregiver. And everyone, almost everyone, I bet everyone through I know you guys raised hands earlier. And I just want to ask all of you, you're paid caregivers. At the least, you're paid caregivers in what you're doing. I'm guessing most of you are double duties, we call it, which means you're also unpaid caregivers, because paid caregivers are disproportionately unpaid caregivers. As you listen to everything I'm going to share, please listen for yourself first. First and foremost, because we have to put our own air masks on first. Caregivers never do that. They're so externally focused. So please listen for yourself. So ARCHANGELS, I want to introduce a term here, women-owned, omni-channel platform, shamelessly hustling. We are shameless hustlers to make change happen for unpaid caregivers, right? Like, let's be shameless hustlers. And we do that with public-private partnerships and understanding the importance of policy and advocacy. And so we sit on the boards of, or put our bodies wherever we can to support efforts like C-TAC that we think are going to transform our nation. And we talk. Anyone that'll give us a stage, we're like, we'll take the stage. We have something to share. We want to share some data. And the really good news to everyone in this room as it relates to unpaid caregivers is there are now stages for unpaid caregivers, because people are finally understanding that we are the invisible backbone, and that in a world that is now talking about the care economy, that economy is not really caring for unpaid caregivers. There was a gorgeous, is AARP around? I know we've got Charlotte's here. But thank you to everyone who supported AARP for the RAISE Act. This just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago, the 2022 National Strategy to Support Family Caregivers. C-TAC was mentioned in it. Any Care Counts, which is a campaign we'll talk about, that ARCHANGELS is running as a public-private partnership, was in it. It was a beautiful, beautiful report looking at what can we actually do? What is the so what? And so much of what's going on, you heard it, it's been a theme throughout today, is you cannot get support as an unpaid caregiver if you do not see yourself in that role. And 50% of caregivers, at least, do not respond to the term caregiver. Not only do they not respond, they might be confused by it. They think it means a doctor or a nurse or somebody who works, a social worker in the healthcare system. We also, depending on where we're working, for some people it's actually insulting. They're like, I'm not a caregiver. And this is one of my favorite things. So we'll ask, okay, if you don't see yourself as a caregiver, how would you describe yourself? And people say, I'm not a caregiver. And then we'll often get I'm not a caregiver. And then they'll say the most beautiful things you've ever heard. I'm not a caregiver. I'm just a decent human being. I am just a God-fearing person. I am just a good friend, a son, a daughter, a handyman, a neighbor, a friend. And so we use the term archangel. But we're shameless hustlers. Caregiver, caretaker, carer, care partner, whatever it is, whatever gives you the permission to see yourself in that role. And so the ARCHANGELS platform is focused on a couple things. We get research to give us data, to do engagement campaigns, to get someone to validate their intensity, that's the term that we use, and then to crosswalk them over to this support that unpaid caregivers who don't even realize they're in this role in the first place don't know exists because they're too exhausted to go look for it, or they've looked once before and had their heart broken, so they're not looking anymore because they don't have any time. And they're focused on caring for someone else. And then we use all that to drive impact. So we're super data geeks. In the last 2 years, 4 studies, 3 published with the CDC, 1 with the Journal of Affective Disorders, and the data that shows is compelling. 43%, this builds on the work that AARP and NAC published in 2020. That was a shock already. We're like, what? 21% of people are caregivers in the US? That's crazy. Well, as of COVID, it's 43%. 43%. And many of us are getting it from both sides. Think of the stories I was just talking about. My children, my dad, right? That's sandwich generation, club sandwich generation, panini generation, whatever you want to call it. You're probably getting squashed, right? Everything is oozing out. 23% of adults in the US are sandwich generation caregiver. 45% are men, 1 in 4 millennials, 1 in 5 are Gen Z. Those were for before COVID. And so much caregiving is getting pushed younger and younger and younger. We know school-age children who are in this role can't go to school because they're in this role. Of that 43% of adults who are in this role, 70% have at least 1 mental health impact. Anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. This is all in the CDC studies. Now I want to dig in on that 23% who are sandwich generation. And I want to look specifically at suicidal ideation. So that is the technical term for I have actively thought about suicide in the last 30 days. I've actively thought about suicide. Like, put that in your belly for a second. And then we're going to go through 4 cohorts. Cohort 1 is not in any caregiver role at all right now. 4.5% of that population has actively thought about suicide as of COVID. I'm going to go to cohort 2, which is someone who's serving as a parent or a guardian to 1 or multiple individuals under 18, doubles to 9%. Just think about that for a second. Cohort 3 is I'm caring for someone or multiples over 18, 10%. Now you all write down on a piece of paper, you know I'm going to say cohort 4 is sandwich generation caregivers caring for under 18 and over 18 at the same time. What percent of that population do you think has actively thought about suicide in the last 30 days as of COVID? It's 52%. So if you, CDC study, if you walk into a room of sandwich generation caregivers, you need to know it is more normal than not to have thought about suicide in the last 30 days. And someone said to me once, like, a reporter, like, how does that make you feel? And I said, I find it horrifying and heartening. And the reporter was so grossed out by me, he was like, did you just say you find that heartening? And I said, I do, because if you are an unpaid caregiver, you know you feel that way. You just thought you were the only one. And that's part of what's driving it, and that gets harder the younger we are, the more we think we're the only one. So what do we do with all that stress? We cope, we survive, we might self-medicate. We are really good at self-medicating. As of COVID, unpaid caregivers are increasing their use of substances to cope at 5 times the rate of everybody else. Now, I know, for me, I find it a highly effective strategy. But what if, in the middle of the night, I can't, right? For some reason, I can't do it. Then what do? Well, then I eat. 50% of unpaid caregivers cope through food. The data I hear anecdotally from people who talk about what's going on is usually anywhere from 30 to 80 pounds someone gains over the period of time being an unpaid caregiver. Because they have no time. And then if someone tells me to exercise, I'm mad. Like, really? Why don't you meditate? When? Right? So caregiver intensity is the terminology that we use. It puts you in the green, yellow, or red. If you're in the red, over 90% at least one mental health impact. Before COVID, 8% of us were in the red. As of COVID, 24%. So 3 times increase. What do you think has happened in the last, let's say, 9 weeks? Going up, coming down? It's going up. It's going up. We all thought maybe it's going to get easier. It's not getting easier. Inflation. If you're an unpaid caregiver, on average, out of pocket, $7,000 more a year. That was before inflation. Gas, groceries. This is on average. Think about stress levels. If you were lucky enough to be able to work from home, now you're getting called back into the office. That infrastructure gone. Daycare is closed. Elder care closed. It is now 29%. Holding steady. Close to 1 in 3 are in the red. And I'm going to read this. This is from a healthcare executive that some of you know. He sends me this text. Hey, I'd love to chat when we can. I'm not suicidal, but I am a caregiver on 2 coasts at the same time and an end of life for both of them as well. It's a real shit show here. My sister's family dynamics are awful, and well, you know, the meeting with the doctor whether to stop chemo is tomorrow. My father's probably not going to make it through the summer, but she'll probably die before he does, and that will be going on. I'll have to fly to New York to sit Shiva right after she dies, which is probably weeks, and then take care of my dad's funeral, which I think will be soon after. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying I don't have a lot of time for our project, but I will make as much as I can. Anyways, I'm not suicidal. I am having some muscle spasms and tremors, but I still have my sense of humor. Anyways, love to chat when you get a chance, but I wanted to let you know what's going on. And it said sent with Siri on the text. And I'm picturing this guy, I love him, driving down the road in the middle of managing all this. And you know, what do? I get off the Zoom that I'm on. I'm like, guys, I've got to go right now. And I call him. Why? Because what does it mean if you say twice you're not suicidal? You're suicidal, right? But he's anyway, I'm fine. I've got my sense of humor. Like, that's not funny. So this is the kind of thing that's happening with executives who supposedly have all the resources, all the knowledge, all the access. I want to dig in specifically on men. This was a guy. Between 40 and 50% of caregivers are men, depending on which study you look at. So when we talk about messaging and talk about getting to people, and we know that a huge percentage of unpaid caregivers don't see themselves in their role, I promise you this. If the campaign that you're running is an older woman sitting in a chair, and a younger woman with her hand on her shoulder, and the older woman is looking up at her, and the younger woman is looking down at her, you've gotten everyone you're going to get with that campaign. Everyone else is like, that's not me, what's that? So this is an example of a campaign. It's a little fresh, it's a little naughty, has kind of a bad word in there. I just listened to 2 people at an organization fight about whether or not it was appropriate to use this word, badasses. It says, Archangels are badasses for good and the intensity is real. What's your score? And you can see this guy, he's not who you picture, right? He's tatted up, he's got a baby. Oftentimes people don't even see the baby. It's like a Rorschach test. They're just like, wow, that guy's cool. This campaign, 54% of the men who respond, 54% were sandwich generation, compared to that 23% benchmark. 43% were in the red. So there are ways to find this population. We have to speak to them in a way that lifts them up. that demonstrates that they're amazing, they're braver, stronger, wiser. We think they kick ass. We can't approach this with like, you know, pitying, which is how so many of these things come across. And I want to talk about that as it relates to Shirley. And many of you know the Blue Chair Fund and what an extraordinarily powerful woman she was. Because everything we're talking about doesn't matter if it doesn't get back to that individual, that one person. So Bryn, where's Bryn? This is a beautiful quote from Bryn. Hi, Bryn. Calling Shirley a force, struck by how she could cut through the noise. Last year, she generously agreed to be an advisor to CAPC, focused on improving serious illness care for Black patients and family. I spoke with her about our planned strategies, the stakeholders we wanted to engage, etc. She listened to me, and after a pause, asked, what exactly will this mean for individual people? What would be different for me as a person living with cancer if you succeed? How would my oncologist feel about the work that you're describing? And that's what it's all about. Take all that data, right? Statistics are humans with the tears wiped away. Bring it down to one person. Shirley was beautiful at doing that. So we're doing a campaign called Any Care Counts. I'm going to walk through very quickly what we're doing with the state of New York. And it is a public-private partnership, all about collaboration, all about multiple stakeholders. It's got the AAAs involved, NYSOFA involved, and it's funded by Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation and other organizations as well. And it's free. Any caregiver in the state of New York has access to this. And we're shameless. So we are using social media. We are going out to the AAAs. We are going through YMCAs, faith-based groups, educational communities, you name it. Shameless hustlers, omni-channel, wherever we can find an unpaid caregiver, we're going to find them, fire stations. So we're doing this research to develop these campaigns to get someone's intensity validated, crosswalk them to support, and then drive that impact. So the intensity index is a process we'll do together. We'll then crosswalk someone to this support. So when I get my score, it tells me the top 2 things driving my intensity. And then it's going to crosswalk me over to what exists right now for free that I can have access to support me. Don't do a hit and run. Don't ask a lot of questions. Don't admire problems. It makes me crazy when I go to the doctor's office. They're like, how are you doing on all these levels? I'm like, I'm very, very bad. And I lie about the drinking every time. But I am honest about everything else. And then they're like, great, thanks. Good luck with that. Thank you, I just got to fill out my data. I can check the box that I asked those questions. It doesn't matter. No hit and runs, right? So anytime we ask a question, we do something with the answer. So in New York, that might include if you're a part of employer. If you're an employer, we can send you out a toolkit. You can get pointed to NY Connects. You can get pointed to TruAlta, which NYSOFA. There's tons of resources that New York is now making available. And all of this is to drive that data, to drive the story. First of all, to let me see for myself I'm in the red, give me the language. Second of all, give that data, roll it up in one place so my employer understands, or my health plan, or my health system, whatever it might be, and my community, and my state. You know how New York is using this? They're using it to march on the legislature, to say, do you know how many caregivers we have who are in the red? We need more funding. We need more funding for our AAAs. We need more funding for insert. So this is an example of a dashboard for one of our employers that we're live with. And you can see what it returns back to them is I've got over 1,000 people. We went live in June. They just started the rollout in September. Small number still, but over 1,000 people have gotten their score. 24% are in the red. And it tells you at a high level what's helping and what's raising intensity. What are those drivers? I can't read. No time for youth feeling stressed out or depressed. So I get that intensity by county, drivers, buffers. It can then do a calculator. What's the estimated impact on mental health? What's the estimated impact on cost, productivity? And then get me to those state-sponsored resources. Now, if we're working with a particular health plan, or a particular state, or a particular faith-based organization, they might have their own resources. Well, then it can crosswalk that person to that resource as well. But we start available to anybody at any point in time, these resources. And then all of this data is going to support or request a budget plan proposal for 2023 to drive more support for unpaid caregivers. And you can dig in on any of these. You can say, you know, this particular site, you'll see corporate, 27% is in the red, but on the right, the 12%, that's because that site, that satellite office has a super activated person at the helm who's talking about it just like Tabitha did, who talks about it openly, tells everyone, bring your scars. And it's not the bring your scars. This is what I think is so funny. I hear this a lot. Well, they tell me to be my authentic self. They forget the second half of the sentence. Be your authentic self as long as it's what we need you to be as an authentic self. That doesn't work, right? So why is only 20%, 12% in the red? Because that's a silo office that allows people to be their authentic selves. And that is an example of the work that we're so incredibly lucky to be able to be doing in Ward 7. I know, Reverend Pitts, where are you? You're somewhere around here. Thank you to C-TAC, thank you to John, thank you to the group. And Louisville, Angela Overton, where is Angela? Can we just love on this woman who routinely talks me out of a tree? So what we're gonna do together right now is we're all gonna get our intensity score. So pull out your phone and use the QR code. And while you're using that to call it up, I'm actually gonna introduce David, who's gonna come up and he's gonna take his thing, because then he and I are gonna have a little fireside chat. David, where are you? David Jones. So you guys all be pulling that up, and while you're doing that, David, I'm gonna introduce you quickly in a couple of different ways. You are on the board of Humana. You are the chairman and managing director of Chrysalis. I like what you have in your bio. It says lifelong learner, teacher, coach, advisor, investor in innovation. Now, I underlined investor in innovation because when I read that about people, an investor in innovation, I'm old now and jaded, and I'm a bootstrapper. And I've seen a lot of innovation that gets people who are already doing well to be doing way, way, way more well. And unpaid caregiving is a great example of that. There's a lot of money being made on the back of people who aren't getting paid at all, unpaid caregivers or low-paid caregivers. And one of the things that I love about David is that's not what he's doing. David puts his body there. That is why he is so present in the work that we're doing in 40203. I don't think David's interested in, he's interested in making an impact. And if we can get to a place where more of the folks who are in charge of where dollars are flowing have David's kindness and authenticity and deep, deep-rooted curiosity, I think we'll be in a much better place. So, is everybody ready? We're gonna go. So you click through to get your score. Glasses on, glasses off. Am I caring for a relative or friend who's 18 years of old or older? Any care counts. Yes, I am. Am I caring for a child or a teenager under the age of 18? Yes, yes, I am. Anyone who wants a child or teenager under the age of 18? I have 2. The situation where the person or people I provide care for can be unpredictable or unstable. I cannot tell you enough how much this is true in my personal life right now. My dad's actually in a pretty stable position, but I have another family member who lives across the country who's in, it's a mutual caregiver situation. There's addiction involved. They've lost their house. They're now living in a different house, and I had no idea any of this existed because they're in complete isolation. So yes, I don't know what to expect in my caregiving situation, so it's hard to plan ahead. Strongly agree. I've actually shared on many occasions with folks, I would love to be there. If I can be there, I'll be there, but if I can't, I cannot predict. So don't ask me if that's not gonna be okay, because literally I have to prioritize this other thing that's going on. I've had to cut down on my own expenses because I help pay for things for the person or people I provide care for. That's actually not true for me. My honey and I both have jobs, so we are okay. For this other person, I just shared that they lost their house. So massive, massive, massive impact on them as a family. And it's turning out, I thought that there was savings there. There is no savings. There is no safety net. Our family has disagreements about people not doing enough to help. This is so true. I can't even tell you. Like, my brother and I did not speak for 4 months. We couldn't be in the same room without wanting to annihilate each other. And he used to be my best friend. We were so at odds at how to handle this. Our family has disagreements about people not spending enough time with the person or people I'm providing care to. Yes, that's a big issue. I feel underprepared for most situations I encounter as a caregiver. I'll say yes to that. I think I'm getting better than I was before, but I always feel I should be doing more than I am. Always. I never feel that I'm doing enough. I have more to do as a caregiver than I can handle. I don't think I do. I don't think I don't. You know why? I feel incredibly supported by friends, neighbors, and family. Incredible. I was so lucky at that. So lucky. And I do have someone I can turn to for support when things are difficult. But am I confident in my ability to navigate the health insurance benefits? I've been in this space for 25 years, and I have no clue. I am just learning that this family member is a dual eligible. We're figuring out how to manage that, that whole process. That's insane, right? Like, I work in this space. I know how to manage the financial situation of the person or people I'm caring for. I have no idea. But I do feel I'm doing a good thing. And that's protective. That is restorative. And I think I'm learning to cope with being a caregiver. I think I'm becoming confident in my ability to handle most things. But it has completely limited my ability to spend time doing the things I take pleasure in. I really don't have any friends right now. There's Joan. Joan did an intervention with me about 6 months ago. When was it? And she's like, you're just not a very good friend right now. I was like, I know I'm not. I'm failing at everything. And I feel that way. Unpaid, and then Joan was like, oh my God, I had no idea that was going on. Why didn't you tell me? Because unpaid caregivers don't tell anybody anything. They just survive. I don't have as much personal freedom as I would like. That's true. I would not say I feel depressed, but I would say I am unbelievably stressed out. In fact, last night, my daughter was watching me. I combed out so much hair. I literally was like, wow. And she was kind of grossed out. And she's like, are you okay? Is that a sign of something bad? I was like, I don't think so. I think it's stress. Right? Like, nervous laughter. I do sometimes feel manipulated by the person or people I care for. That's true. I do sometimes resent what I have to do as a caregiver. It's true. I am working full-time for pay. I have definitely missed more work than normal. I would not say I'm less productive because here I am talking about my job at my job. I get incredible flexibility. This is very protective. And I do get a lot of support in what I'm doing, and that's huge. So to this point, just click no thanks, just bring me to my score. And it should give you a little heart thing. I had to take screenshots of this. So I am in the red. I took it again right before here to see if I still was in the red. I'm a 63. It's going to give you, we call it the horoscope, tell you a little bit more about you. And then the most important thing is it's going to tell you your top 2 drivers, things that are making everything more intense, and top 2 buffers. And then it's going to crosswalk you over to the resources that exist for free. Now, this particular instance that you're looking at is an instance that relates to things that are available to anyone through the state, through the AAAs primarily, or the ASAPs if you're in Massachusetts. But you can see, for me, it's no time for me, navigating money and benefits for others, but I do feel like I have someone in my corner and I do feel supported at work. So I'm going to switch over now to our conversation. Am I going on this side of you? You tell me which side I'm going on.
Over here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So David, let me ask you a question first, which is, you just took your score.
Yep.
And we talked about this before. You could take it either as somebody right now,
Yep.
or as a situation you're going to share with us that happened before. Which one did you do, and were they the same or different?
So I did it right now, Alex, as I would have completed it when I was the caregiver for my father, the family caregiver for my dad. At the same time, my mom was declining. And I was, I don't know, is 67 deep in the red? How okay, so that's where I was. And I think, you know, that reflects, you know, a lot of benefit from having a supportive workplace and flexibility and financial resources that a lot of other people don't have. But the, you know, all of those questions about how do you feel about your own competence and how are your relationships going, we're just fried. And I will say I'm a little bit surprised, but, you know, 2.5 years later, I'm still pretty high in the yellow, and just because when I think about those questions, they bring a lot of it back.
Well, one of the things you shared with me, we had dinner a little bit back, and we talk about this, and I don't think we talk about this enough, and Angela can talk about this. We you know, ministers are double-duty caregivers, and Angela, maybe later you could talk a little bit tomorrow about the impact being an unpaid caregiver has, or the impact of being a paid caregiver on your ability to be an unpaid caregiver. And the number of folks who will say to me, you know, realizing that I was in this role and I didn't know it,
right,
helped save my marriage. Because I could go back and say to my partner, I'm sorry I'm a jerk all the time. Like my honey says back to me now when I go like this at him, he says, babe, I think you're just in the red. Which at the moment he says it, I find infuriating. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not in the red, I just don't like you. But then over time I realized that is exactly what's going on. And you've had situations where you can now use your ability to explain it.
Well, it's been helpful. I've also, I observe, I have 2 adult children, and I think one of them carried a heavy load with my parents in particular, and had also, I'd say, was probably pretty deeply in the red, and the family dynamics just get complicated. And I guess, again, the importance of recognizing for me that, I'm not alone in this has been very useful. At the time, I had no clue. Some of the wonderful people who've spoken earlier today, I mean, my neck is sore from nodding my head up and down so often because, the comments about nobody knows what palliative care is. I mean, I'm embarrassed. I'm a healthcare nerd. I have a lot of alleged experience, but I didn't recognize that that's where I was. I didn't recognize that's where my parents were. I didn't know how to call on or marshal the resources, how to navigate the complexity of the system. And, I wound up feeling like, gosh, I am uniquely incompetent, in this.
So I want to ask you 2 questions related to that. One is, can you give this audience a quick snapshot into what was the, what do you know about healthcare based on the family that you come from and the
Sure.
job that you're in now?
Okay, so I started and have been running since the early 90s a venture capital firm that focuses heavily on innovation in healthcare delivery and information systems. And my father is the co-founder of Humana and served as its CEO for 44 years. And I've been on the board since '93 and chaired the board when he retired. So I have been around healthcare and its complexity for a long time. And the ideas about investing in the integration of care delivery and analytics and information, I mean, that's been the holy grail for most of this time. So in principle, you would think I would come to the interaction with my parents' end of life pretty well informed, and also with pretty good access to network and knowledge and and people and good insurance.
So I want to ask you how you found your way to C-TAC and why C-TAC, but I just want to make sure we all it surprises me every single time I hear him say that.
Yeah.
So you had an end-of-life experience with both of your parents.
Right.
That did not reflect in any way, shape, or form what you wanted or expected or tried to have. And you have all of these resources at your...
I would say I want to be a little bit clearer. Parts of the experience did reflect what I would hope that everyone would have. We had wonderful clinical care, caring, loving providers, including, the personal caregivers and, from top to bottom of the skill spectrum. It's not an absence of love or of clinical capacity in my individual experience. It's the left hand and the right hand not knowing what to do. The core problem was the inability to organize care for 2 frail elders at home, which is where they were emphatic they wanted to be, and the constant schlepping back and forth to 6 different medical appointments every week and the ER frequently. So, there was plenty of good, but the cost of the care was far higher than it needed to be, given the express choices of my own parents and the complexity of getting what, in principle certainly should be simpler than cancer care, organized was quite hard. I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question.
No, but that does answer. So what about that then led you to C-TAC?
Oh, so, my parents passed within a month of each other. So a couple months after that, I was, had a kind of a surge of sense that, good grief, if this was difficult for me and my family, it must be hard for everyone and harder for many. And surely there are people out there who are trying to make this better. People who are innovating, people who are trying to apply communication technologies. And some of this was venture capital nerdism, who are the people who are using the new information tools. Some of it was, what is happening in public policy? Where are the advocates? Where are the people, where are the nurses and the caregivers who understand this problem, who are trying to organize around it? And I called you, Alex. I called everyone I knew who even might have any connection to this. And a nearly universal characteristic, my last question was always, who else should I talk to? And people would say, well, you should talk to C-TAC. Call John Broyles, because C-TAC is kind of the hub, at least that's what I saw, of people who are working on this issue creatively, and I think with a sense of hope.
Yeah, so I have two more questions for you. The first is, talk to me a little bit about 40203 and what you're loving about that.
Well, so one of the unexpected, miraculous benefits of engaging with C-TAC was they had this project in Louisville, and 40203 is one of, if not the poorest, least resource zip code in Louisville. And C-TAC had this, at that point, fairly incipient plan to work with the faith communities in several different cities to try to figure out how to build on the trust within those communities as the core of delivering better access to complex care, to end-of-life care, than the members of those communities were receiving. And my initial goal was to be a fly on the wall and learn. This is part of my learning journey. I had the good fortune to meet Angela Overton, who was over there in the dark, but I know she's there. And the group of wonderful people from national organizations, from C-TAC, and from several local churches and the University of Louisville, who are working on this, on how to get the resources into the churches to create a little bit of bandwidth, because the ministers are so overburdened, the caregivers are so overburdened, and then get the healthcare resources organized, maybe add community health workers or navigators to help the ministers and the other faith leaders in those churches connect people to resources so that the complexity doesn't just blow them up as it did me.
Yeah. So, one of the things, Tabitha, that you said today that I loved was you said all money is not good money. And one of the things, and you actually were like, wait, what? But then we talked about it. And I think a theme that we heard, and I have been schooled in this repeatedly through my work with C-TAC, through work with faith-based organizations, is that importance of trust. And one of the things that you and I talked about with 40203, but I would say also in the work that's happening with Ward 7, is the importance of the community is leading. It is the community that is defining what is needed, what support is, what is value. Can you just share a little bit about why you believe in the Blue Chair Fund, why you're excited for what we'll be talking about tomorrow?
Sure. I think the reason I'm excited about the Blue Chair Fund, and I did not have the privilege of knowing Shirley, but the core idea is listen, sit in the blue chair and listen to what what the patient, what the individual wants for their end of life or their journey through advanced illness. I wish I had thought about that as I was trying to be the caregiver myself. Listening would have helped, would have helped me. But the core of the need, and this is, the reason I think the Blue Chair Fund is important for the community work that we're doing. First of all, it's going to cost some money. We have to add resources to under-resourced communities. And we have to add a little bit of navigational support to the healthcare system to be better at connecting to communities that have been and are deeply underserved. So money is required. The other thing, though, that is required is, I think, maybe all money is not good money. And, one of the things I'm also observing, all volunteering is not necessarily good volunteering. We have to take these care models and actualize them in ways so that the individuals who we're all trying to help actually benefit, right? That's the core of, it's not just sit there and then go away and do things the same old way. It's listen and act differently. And I guess maybe there is a third thing. The hope is that the data and analytics that come out of bringing newer models of community-based care to life will be able to circle back around to CMS and hopefully identify things that are worth investing policy change behind. So that's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I made a little note to myself when I was thinking about you earlier, which is one of the things I love, is I feel as though the corporate world, right, the finance world, it really does listen to you. You have earned enormous credibility over the years. But I watched what you're doing in 40203, the work that you're doing with C-TAC, where you are quiet and you listen and you listen and you listen and you listen. And I was thinking, I think you're earning the trust of the people who most need to benefit, who have earned the benefit. I think there's a huge disconnect between where is value created and where is value extracted. And I look at, unpaid caregivers is a great example of these are the folks who are doing the work. They are the invisible backbone of the country. And we have not yet found a way to funnel the value that they create back to them.
Well, and the thing that, your data brings alive for me, Alex, is just how universal this reality is. Almost everybody will go through the experience of being an unpaid caregiver at some point in their life. I think we can make the journey easier by sharing, by being open about it. All of that is important, but we also have to impact the structures of how care is delivered and not only medical care, but also social care, spiritual care, so that, at the point of need, people get assistance that is more personalized and responsive. So
I was told in the beginning that I was the only thing standing between everyone here and getting a drink. And obviously, we all know what that means. So I will apologize. I'm going to be in so much trouble when we get off the stage because I definitely went over our time. But it is such a pleasure. Always. I learn every time. And you just have an extraordinary, I think the love that is in this room and sort of the hope that I feel in here, I feel I've been able to see be growing in you too, and it's a wonderful, wonderful day.
I think that's right, and I compliment the room because the room is filled with hope and belief that, that we can make a difference, and, we all go through these hard times and we got to bounce back into hope. So thank you. Alex, great job.